What if the real story of your hotel is not told on your website, not in your brand book, not even by your marketing team, but by the person cleaning the hotel room, serving breakfast, or answering a naive question about where the chicken comes from? In this episode, I'm joined by John Elbing, a storytelling strategist who challenges the way leaders think about brand, culture, and experience. We explore why most hospitality brands are telling the wrong story and how the most successful ones quietly build stories that guests and staff want to retell without being asked. Welcome, Jonah. Thanks for joining us today.
Hello. Yes, happy to be here and happy to jump into this really fascinating subject.
John, before we go into the storytelling and hospitality, I'd love to start with you. When you look at your own journey from software and finance to storytelling, what personal moments made you realize that stories, not strategies, are what actually move people to act?
So I think there were two moments. One was I always in my previous corporate jobs and things, I always wanted to be on stage and present the projects and things, and I was really bad at it. And I thought you had to learn it by heart and have these fixed things. And when I realized that if I just told the story, people connected much better. It was much more natural, much more authentic. Um, and that changed the way I communicated in companies. And then more recently, I'd working with a lot of companies and startups around all different topics. I had so many different methodologies with canvases, with post-its and things, and worked, all these things. And people were a little bit sort of like very interesting, but what do I do Monday morning? And I found that storytelling actually was really powerful as a tool. I mean, sure, you get a story and that's great. But what it does is it forces you to decide, who am I talking to? Who am I not talking to? Uh, what is important and what is less important? Because I think we get lost in trying to say everything about everything. And by putting it into a kind of a storytelling framework that really creates focus and alignment. And I'd find that, teams would have a shared story, and that was very powerful.
Well, John, listening to that, it's clear that storytelling for you is not a communication tool, but a way of seeing the world. So let me bring this into hospitality, because this is where many leaders are struggling today. So if storytelling is so powerful, why do most hotels and companies, for that matter, still sound exactly the same online and offline? What are they missing?
So one thing I think is hotels, but also companies in general, sort of see themselves from the inside. They're obsessed about the delivery, about the service, about the product, about everything like that, and they sort of forget the customer's standpoint. And when I go to a hotel, I'm living a specific story. Sometimes it's for work, sometimes it's on vacation, sometimes it's to get away, sometimes it's to be adventurous. And so if I go into this hotel that has sort of erased the story, they want to be open to everyone, and it becomes generic. Um, I read this story about this hotel where the one thing they had was by the pool there was a red telephone, and anybody could grab the phone and someone at the other end, and they could order an ice cream. And someone would come out with white gloves, silver platter, and bring them ice cream along the thing. And if you looked at the comments on social media and all these websites and things, that stood out. Somehow this idea that you're different, that you dare do something memorable. I think hotels are caught between efficiency, perfection, everything has to be clean and on time and things like that, which sort of erases the opportunity to do something maybe a little bit weird. You come back and that hotel was amazing. There was this telephone, and and then and then the rest was fine. So if you can sort of choose your uniqueness. How are you different? Uh, I think that yeah, there's this risk of being uniform, and you want to make everyone happy, and then everyone so it becomes a little bit boring.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point of view. I mean, it reminds me also about a project that I'm still working on in Cyprus, in the mountains. Now, Cyprus is a destination which is mostly known for the beach holidays. But there's a developer who he thought that, well, from the village where he's from, he has some land next to a national park, and he loves uh, creating or having beehives and creating this organic uh, honey. So when we were talking with him about creating the concept for the resort, we realized that one of the single most, besides the beautiful view and the beautiful hotel it eventually will be, was it has one uniqueness that no one else have, and that's the bees. And well, then we thought, well, what else do you, besides having a very beautiful honey? Well, he said that actually there's something else, and it's about for people who have arthritis. They like to come. I see that they're coming, and I'm using it also because I have arthritis. I'm getting a bee venom to treat my arthritis. So that's this apitherapy that has been around for a few thousand years. So now this is going to be becoming maybe one of the most single point or reason why people will be coming to this resort. Besides looking at the mountains or looking in the nighttime at the starry nights and so on. So this is actually the point you're also making, is that you find that one particular thing that sticks in people's memories about the place.
I think somehow there are big chains and large hotels that have to cater to very wide audiences, and that might make it a little bit more difficult. But for more boutique hotels, this idea that they can really target. I feel that when I'm scrolling through some hotels, I'll scroll past, and then one will think, "Ooh, that's for me," and I sort of recognize myself in a hotel. And I think that's true with any kind of brand. You sort of, you're not quite sure what. It's a mix of your identity, what you're looking for, your challenges and things, and you think, oh, that one, that one's. And so if you can make something where your ideal client, you choose who your ideal client is, and they recognize themselves in your hotel because somehow you cater to the style, the even the vocabulary, or there's something that makes people feel welcome. And then they'll go and look and see what do the rooms look like, or what is the view and all that kind of thing. But there's this emotional recognition that I think is important.
Yeah, this is an excellent point about that. There's one particular point that you feel very comfortable with, and that's why you stop looking. You stop scrolling on the website, and you say, "Okay, maybe check this out." That's so true. You say brands should stop telling their own story. What is that idea? So, why is that idea so uncomfortable for leaders?
Well, sort of as we said before, this idea that you have to guarantee this level of quality and things. It's very much a system where it's running 24/7 and it has to keep running, and so it's hard to step out and see yourself from the outside. You're really so concentrated on those millions of details. I mean, it must be exhausting to manage a hotel, and so sometimes, yeah, to try to step away and sort of say, who am I attracting? Who is recognizing, am I, it's the hurried business traveler that, sees the efficiency, sees the location and things, or is it the family? And how can I lean into that view from the outside? What is the vibe I give? And yeah, sometimes you have to purposely stop and say, okay, I'm going to uh, I'll let go from all the chores and tasks and everything for a minute, and look at myself from with my client's eyes.
Yeah. Typically, in hotels, and I also had the privilege of operating several hotels. You tend to be so focused on strategies, and you have your uh, uh, key performance indicators and so on. And in hotels, my question really is, even though I understand you're not from the hotel business, but where does storytelling usually break down first? Leadership, culture, or systems?
I think it really comes from the top in the sense that um, what do you tell your employees? You know, a hotel has this whole range of roles and things. With each one has their specific uh, domain of expertise and responsibility. And so, if your story to your employees is about welcoming customers, about customer experience, about going the extra mile, giving them autonomy, because you can tell. I've done conferences in hotels, and so the pens are missing for the whiteboard. So you go out into the hall, and some of them, the standard response is usually, well, if you go to reception, and you'll find someone that can help you. But and sometimes the person, it could be any employee, and they'll say, "I'll take care of it." And you sort of feel that they're there for you. They're there to solve your problem, and it's a very different feeling than you know. I'm stuck in my role. Sorry, I'm not responsible for pens, so you'll have to
Yeah,
find someone else. Um, and so maybe this idea of autonomy, you can dare go the extra mile, and stop what you're doing to solve a customer problem or to make the experience better. uh, will change filters down to the mindset of your employees and then to the experience of your customers.
yeah. One of my favorite examples of this, and it actually relates to the question I have. If I walk into a hotel and ask let's say, housekeeper, meaning perhaps a person who's cleaning a room, what this hotel stands for, what should I hear if the story really it's really working?
I actually did that.
Oh,
I was in this beautiful palace hotel, and I'll keep it anonymous. But and so with my partner, we roamed through the hotel and we're admiring everything, and we arrived into this kind of auditorium. They were setting up some chairs, and we said, "Oh, sorry," and they said, "No, no, come in." And we talked with these people that were basically bringing in the chairs, and they didn't know they didn't know about the hotel. We asked them things. And so we ended up Googling the hotel together to find the history and and they were almost as amazed as us, to sort of discover that, it's been there since, 19 whatever and things. And this, this hall was something. And, and there was pride in their voices. And I felt that that was such a wasted opportunity, that somehow if the employees can understand and can know about the hotel and express that pride. uh, if you ask then you ask the housekeeper, tell me about the hotel, they'll have a story to tell. um, and that makes it personal, and that makes it authentic. If you come in and there's the information desk and you ask them about the hotel, and you're not really surprised that they can tell you the story, because that's their role. But when you ask some random employee and they have a heartfelt story, that's very powerful.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're so right. Yeah, I had some personal experience also about this, where uh, I asked once in the hotels that we had that, tell me, what is your job? So then the person looked at me, I'm here to create an experience for the guest. I was taken back because I expected totally something else, and that was probably more. I still remember it after 20 years that answer.
Yeah, yeah.
Most hotels claim sustainability. A nice cliche, sustainability. How do you tell the difference between a story that is lived and one that is just written?
I always find that sustainability for somehow luxury, in the sense, hospitality has a sense of luxury. You're being taken care of. And even if you're not in a five-star resort, there's some sense of this idea that they're doing things for you, um, which is a little bit opposite to sustainability. Um, they'll change the sheets regularly, more than you do at home. And there, there's somehow this idea that it's going to be wasteful. And so, and then there's the idea of, efficiency again. So when the hotel says, leave your towel on the floor if you want it changed, it sort of feels that is it sustainability or is it, efficiency and cost saving? Um, and so you sort of feel that a lot of the sustainability has become generic, and they all do it, and it's not something that stands out. And somehow you feel that when you land on something very specific that you haven't seen elsewhere, it sort of, shows that they're in this, into the sustainability is more important than just the normal stuff. Um, I've heard some, I can't quite remember the exact example, but going into a hotel where, you can tell that the choice of materials and there's a whole vibe of sustainability that makes it where you feel that they're concerned more than they're just doing the normal minimum.
Yeah, I mean, hotels has to do it has to be doing a better job and actually describe. And on this question about sustainability, every level of staff should be able to answer the question, and because it becomes very obvious in many cases that you feel that it's a cost saving that the hotel is doing rather than truly a sustainable, because there are so many other aspects of sustainability that the hotel can perform, whether it's about how they are handling energy, how they're handling the recycling of material, how they're handling water, etc. So these are the things like if it's wrapped into a very, very interesting way of describing to the guest, and I think the guest will not question that sustainability title that the hotels like to put in as a part of a banner when they describe the hotel.
Mhm. Yeah, and it comes down to a story again. You make it into something, a story that's a little bit more engaging than just a list on the back of the door.
Yeah. Uh, What is your thoughts? I mean, is it actually dangerous for hotels to try to appeal to everyone? And if so, who should they intentionally exclude?
So to come back to this idea of this recognition, you know, uh, I find it much. I'm attracted to, the hotels that where I feel this connection or this recognition. And so if you're trying to appeal to everyone, somehow you're going to smooth out the differences, to be sure that you don't miss out on, one potential client where you want everything to be, to be easy. And so I'm not sure that there's an easy way to answer which, who do you want to exclude. It's more a question of catering to the ones you do want to connect with, to, create loyalty. uh, and if you're targeting, business travelers, well, it'll be about efficiency and workspace and Wi-Fi and self checkout and early breakfast and all these things. And if you're if it's, adventure vacation, well, it has to be quirky and it has to be different and there has to be the red telephone. Um, and if I'm a business traveler and I have to, and it's complicated, well, that won't work. But if I'm on vacation and it's all the same, well, that sort of won't be the highlight of my vacation. So I
Yes.
think it's to choose and be different and dare being different more than, uh, and you can let go of some people. That's fine. I think it's much better to have raving fans, a small number of raving fans, than, sort of be bland for everyone.
Yeah. Well, a good example of a hotel brand that does that very well is Aman. They have these followers called Aman junkies that follows whenever a new Aman hotel brand hotel is opened, they will make a visit, and they have done it. Aman has been around since for the past 40 years, and what they did by opening the first hotels in Thailand, and so they were doing things that for Thailand is quite normal. The service level of staff, and also attention to every single customer, and also the look of the hotel, the design, and so on. And it took a little bit time to come around, but then suddenly it caught on from people who are willing to come at any price just to stay at the hotel. So they found their own niche, and I think I like the word niche in one way. That is, you find your niche, and that, like we're doing it in Cyprus, it is the apitherapy is really the niche of that, not everything else. So then it captures a smaller audience, and of course you're not competing with price, but you are competing with that you have a unique point that why certain people likes to come there.
Yeah, I think, of course, you always feel that it's easier for a very expensive five-star hotel to be niche because they can afford doing different things. But I find that, like, there's a chain called Zoku, at least around Europe, where they've mixed this kind of lifestyle, work, co-working. So there's a big open space with buffets where people can work, and lounges where you're meant to meet other people when you're at the hotel. A lot of hotels, you come in and you're in your little group in your room, or at your table, and so it's a different kind of vibe of people that might stay a little bit longer because they're on a work thing, and they have dedicated workspaces, and the rooms are sort of transformed where you pull out the bed so you have more space for there's the kind of gym equipment, because people need their routine, and yeah, it is different, and will appeal to a certain niche, and I think that's really interesting.
Stay with us until the end of the episode, where we shift gears and go beyond the professional to reveal the person behind the persona. I will ask John a few quirky and light-hearted questions that uncover a side you would expect. One habit in particular may surprise you, especially coming from a storytelling strategist. We will return now to the episode. Yeah, I know the brand, and I haven't visited, but I saw the design of the hotel rooms. I found that very, very is perfect for someone, for a digital nomad, or who's traveling around, working in a place for a short time, and they have
Exactly.
everything they need. And the social aspect is very important, and that's what they do so well. You know, what is the biggest storytelling mistake you see hotel brands make when they redesign or reposition a property? Because it's quite common that you start to see hotels that they are reflagging it to something else, or they're trying to reposition the property.
So I sort of feel that, well, first, storytelling has become this kind of buzzword where there's these tips and tricks and things where everything, the stories start being generic, um, where uh, you have a great story, and then you realize, well, your competition has a very similar great story. So it's not just a well structured, it's not just about beautiful pictures and checking all the boxes. Yeah, I think the story is about connecting with those cherished customers of yours, and so the story has to go out of being just about the hotel, but it's about the guests. I always say that I help companies tell their customer story. And so it's about what their aspirations and their challenge, what they're looking for, and how the hotel will help them be successful in whatever they're trying, being at work or vacation or adventure or chill. And I think surprisingly in every brand, but probably even more so in hospitality, is so say I'm convinced and I think, oh, this is great. And then, well, you have to make the reservation. I have to decide from all these different, rates. And do I really want the breakfast or and this? And then so when I come in, how do I get from here? And there you project all these little obstacles in your head. And I find that if the hotel can tell the story to show to have them pre-live the experience a little bit, sort of like, this is how it's going to happen when you come in, and this is going to be ready for you, and this is going to thing, and don't worry, and you can change your mind, and all these things, and it'll sort of take down all these little obstacles in people's minds and have them already, if they're already sort of pre-living their experience, they're already one step closer to this engagement and to this connection.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. One thing which I've been thinking quite a bit about, and having worked in hotel leadership position, is that how can a general manager turn storytelling into a daily leadership tool instead of marketing campaign? Because it's very clearly that leadership is a bit struggling with this.
Well, first of all, I think they have to bring the story into the hotel, into the team, into the daily work, and I often feel that's separate. There's the market. Marketing team has a mission to create a website and to create little videos and to create social media posts and to whatever it is, um, and then the hotel has to be run. And there's sort of a disconnect between that story you're trying to tell to the outside and the people that are working in the hotel. And if you can come up with this story that is shared by the team and shared, there's this kind of coherence, this this feeling you get when you see the website and the thing, and then the feeling that feeling continues when you talk to the staff, when you're connected, when people are I really feel also there's this idea, happy employees, happy customers kind of thing. I think that's even more so in hospitality. If I'm in a hotel and the staff is there and is happy to help and is and engage, instead of being caught in saying, okay, I have to, clean the restrooms this many times during the day. It's more about when you're in a restaurant, sometimes you feel the waiters, the first thing they learn is how to cross the room without meeting anyone's eye. Uh, and and so when you're in a hotel and a thing, and you feel that the people are aware of you, are checking on you, are instead of closed in their task, I think that makes a big difference. And so it's up to leadership to the story is kind of the mission of the hotel, and maybe that can be you know communicated.
Yeah, yeah. It reminds me, because so often you see that there's a lot of things that can be worked out, and one of the things that we did was that in traditionally when you have hotels, you tend to focus on the past about what was your occupancy and what was your room rates and so on. But more importantly, I learned something that if we are communicating uh, and asking the staff themselves, what have you heard the guest talking about us, or what experience have they had, and if you can talk about that experience and share that with everybody, I think then it also energizes people in a different way in the hotel where they're working.
Yeah, the other people saying saying good things about you is much more powerful than if you pound your chest and
Yeah.
say it yourself.
If you had to remove websites, ads, and social media, how would the hotel story survive through people alone?
So I think it comes back um, to this idea of being memorable. Um, and hotels are caught between being consistent, um, which is a little bit against being memorable. If every stay is the same, but if something stands out, um, coming back to the kind of the red hotel moment, red telephone. Um, so how do you make, there's in psychology, there's the peak end uh, theory, with this idea in any experience, what you come out with is peak moments and how it ended. And they've done these crazy experiences where you can completely change the perception of the overall experience through that ending. If you're a museum, put your craziest exhibit before the exit, and not at the beginning, because and so and so if you can manage that, if you think of your guests are going through an experience of a number of days in your hotel, and how can you create those peak moments, and how can you make that ending memorable? Often, you're cleaning up, you're late because you have to get out of the room by 11, and then you just drop off, and they make it easy, so you drop off your key, and then you're standing alone in the lobby. But somehow there must be some way to make that wrapping up of the experience. Uh, when you leave a friend's house, you have a big hug, when you leave, and the hotel, you sort of slip out, and yeah, I think there's that end experience that could be worked on.
Yeah. I think one of the most important, there are 2 points that are very important in the hotel experience. One is the arrival experience, how staff makes you feel, and sometimes even more importantly, how they make you feel when you are, by the time you are paying your bill and when you're leaving, and how you're bid farewell, because that's so often that you just pay the bill, and then it might be a very quiet, tired night auditor who was worked all night, and he's the person who was uh, taking care of you when you're paying the bill, and he's tired already, and he didn't have been drinking too much coffee, and this is really somehow gives the impression about the hotel as a whole, and that might be a very lasting memory. And I think this is
Exactly.
something that hotels need to take really seriously, how that is handled.
Yeah. If my last memory is the fact that I struggled to get a taxi and I couldn't find, and things and stuff. I come away with a little frustration that was, so easily mitigated.
Yeah. What is the one question every hospitality leader should ask themselves to know if their story is truly believable?
Uh, It always comes back to the customer standpoint. Um, I think there's a lot of comes back to always checking that everything fits exactly how they want. But your suggestion of this, you know, listening to the customer, uh, the and seeing what really stands out. Um, to Is there a mismatch with what you think your great hotel is delivering to what people feel? There could be small things that people find really great or really annoying that can be easily managed. You just have to take the time to check, and probably not that email form. Are you willing to rate our hotel? I mean, that how do you find a way to really talk about the experience?
Yeah. Okay, so we are now we have a few more questions, and one thing I always ask all my guests, despite if whether they're coming from hospitality but most of them have traveled at one time, and one thing that we have is the technology. I mean, there was before the COVID or pandemic, hotels were really resisted of using high tech or any of the technology that was available because they didn't want to spend the money and they thought everything was working fine. But then when the COVID hit, suddenly people were starting expecting they're having a self check-in and they want to have a keyless entry, and they were looking at digital concierge rather than a physical person. I just wonder what your thought is on this kind of or about automation. Do you think this is the way of the future? And considering hospitality is about the people dealing with people, is less human contact a good idea, or are we going the right way or wrong way? What is your thoughts on this?
Um, I think it depends on your niche, in the sense that automation shouldn't be about efficiency, or not only. It should be about enhancing the experience. So you're the business traveler, and some of these automations, keyless entry, check-in, you can just dump your key and walk out. You don't have to stop. Uh, and there's a coffee corner where you can make your own breakfast easily, and all these things are great. And then in the other sense, other hotel experiences are around the feeling of being pampered. And if you add automation for efficiency, and that takes away from the experience, I think you're losing your niche and your mission. So you just have to be careful that it's not just about cost cutting, just about efficiency, speed. It's about how it fits into this overall experience. And some of these automations can be a lot of fun, or make it, or remove annoying waits and things, and that does enhance the experience. uh, but probably not but probably not only that.
Yeah, and nowadays I start to see that the automation is in the back. Maybe there are certain things that can be automated, and it doesn't take away from the guest experience and so on. You see more and more about that, and yeah, it's an interesting conversation because there are many point of view of this.
Because there's
Okay,
also automation around, yeah, all the hidden things, and that's
yeah,
something else. That might be your next question.
yeah. Well, actually, my question really was relating to uh, what about how you felt this automation is, where we are going with automation, whether this is uh, a good thing, because I think after all, there's an efficiency part which can help, uh, rather than getting rid of people because of the automation, but actually put the people to be focusing more on the guest experience, and that's where I think I personally think that's where I see better value, because this is what the customer is paying for.
So I actually been working with a few companies in the hospitality tech sector, and so you sort of feel automation is about physical things, but so one of them helps you manage online comments. So for a hotel, if you can go from 4 stars to 4.5 stars, that makes a very big difference. And so you're constantly trying to manage all these stars and these comments. But it's more than that. So this company sort of brings together all these things and does these automatic summaries, and will come up with actionable items to say, in all the guest comments, there's a lot, people don't like your pillows or whatever. And somehow that went under the radar, and then you can bring that forward and say, okay, we can do this. And then how do you answer that, and how do you and so there's these automation in online customer interactions that can be pretty powerful also, and not just during the hotel experience itself.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so I have two more questions before we wrap up. One question is that, but besides what we have talked about, is there any particular trends that you have noticed which is happening in hospitality that hoteliers should take note of?
um, well, AI is everywhere. So how will AI affect hotels? I've seen a number of examples. On one extreme, I found companies working to kind of create AI agents. You have a virtual CFO and a virtual this, and the management of the hotel is enhanced by AI and things on one sense. Um, AI also comes into to descriptions, to if how will companies, a lot of hotels where are fighting to be found on normal search, SEO, but also on these booking sites and things like that. But more and more people are using AI, and say, so what is the best hotel in Cyprus? Knowing that I have arthritis. And so how will, ChatGPT, how do you make sure that they will say, they will find you and they understand, and so that to structure the information of your hotel so that it can be that it'll bubble up in the right way in these new ways of people are searching. Even people will sort of say, okay, plan me a 7-day vacation in Crete, and I want to go, and it'll come up and choose hotels and choose restaurants and do all these things, and you want to be part of that. And I think that's pretty daunting, and that sort of goes against the probably how you usually work, but that'll be something that'll probably come up in the near future more and more.
Yeah. Okay, very good, John. This has been a very interesting conversation we had. So lastly, if people are interested to find out more about you and what you do, how can they reach you and how can they connect with you?
So I wrote a book called Story Building, with the idea that you structure your story. It's not just about storytelling, but it's about really building a story. And my company is called Standpoint, which really shows how much I think it's important to take your customer's standpoint. So if you go to standpoint.ch, I'm in Switzerland. I'm in Geneva, Switzerland, and CH is for Switzerland. You'll find things about this story building methodology, how I work with companies to help them build their story, bring their team together around stories, and uh, and then things about how to find the book if that's of something of interest.
Excellent. Well, I think this definitely will stimulate people to get the book and read about it, because you're hinting about in your comments about these topics. So very, very useful, and because this is what most hotels are struggling somehow, and I think this is a very relevant and timely discussion we had. So, John, thank you very much. I really appreciate your joining today's episode, and thanks for all the fantastic insight.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Before we wrap up, we are switching gears. This is off the mic part of the show. We leave the titles, frameworks, and strategies at the door and get to know the human behind the ideas. In other words, the person behind the persona. No right answers, no slides, just curiosity and a bit of fun. So I have, John, a few questions, and I have not shared them before, so some might become a little bit surprising, but let's give it a try. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
If you had to explain what you do to a stranger in an elevator, and you only had one floor, what would you say?
Companies struggle to communicate what they do. They often talk just from the inside out. I help companies see their customer standpoint, build their customer story so that they can create engagement and connect with their ideal customers.
Oh, well done. What is a belief you had 5 or 10 years ago that completely changed your mind about?
hmm. um, so I think the shift I've gone through is this human centered uh, view, where I was a lot about processes and methods, and if you work through logically through different things, and I think I found more and more that the humans are at the center of things, and taking their standpoint, and 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 letting go a little bit of the cold obvious logic. I love this idea that we're predictably irrational. There are so many things that seem to believe that humans are rational, that their finances are rational, their choices are rational, and they're not. But it's fascinating, and to understand that, I think, has changed my view of the world.
What's one habit or ritual you have that people would not expect from you from a storytelling strategist?
So, um, so there are habits at different levels. One is I take naps. Where this idea where I can shut off, power down, and then continue. I've asked, I've been in groups where we've asked this question, and people come up with these how they do exercise and they go out and they get up at 5 in the morning, and then when I say that I take a nap to recharge, I always find that a little bit uh, sets me apart from that. But so that's one.
Well, you have we have something in common in this sense. I enjoy doing that. I have during the days time when I worked in the Middle East, I used to work very long days, and I always in the afternoon went home for a nap, and I learned how to take these power naps, whether it's a half an hour nap or 45-minute nap. And I also had this actually, in fact, I had it developed earlier when I was a student at the university. So I always took, because I was financing my own studies by working as a waiter in the evenings. So it was very important to me that I needed that half an hour or 45-minute nap every day to be energized. And I think this is it's a very good habit. I really understand what you're doing about that.
Okay, good.
If you were forced to work in a hotel for 1 week, what job would you choose and which one would you absolutely avoid?
So I would choose one when, being in contact with the customers, and avoid the ones where I was hidden away, doing something that was completely disconnected. Um, so the ideal would be, chief customer experience officer or something. I'll handle the red telephone, but just being in the being hidden away, and probably hotels could have probably shift that a little bit, where you know people that they're hiding some way, they're not really the people that come and clean the room, they come in when you're not there, and they you try to not bump into them, but actually they can be more in contact than you think. And yeah, I think that's the
Okay, so for my final question, what's a small everyday moment that still gives you disproportionate joy?
um there's this idea of your why. I think my why is understanding, not even learning, just understanding. And so this idea that when there's you know, I read and I connect, and often there's this little spark where you think, "Ooh, that was interesting," uh, and to keep your mind always. Surprisingly, my daughter's 32, and last night we talked 2 hours on the structure of the universe and dark matter and things, and got into these things about how big the universe is, and all these things, and just this, yeah, the ideas. Plus, I have a cat, and so a purring cat is always a good moment.
Very good. Okay, thank you, John. I think that was the end of the mic. Thank you for tuning in to The Social Hotelier. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a review, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. We have an incredible lineup of guests coming your way, so stay tuned for more thought-provoking conversation. Until next time, take care and keep exploring.